Now in the last video we added our ability to add bullets to our game. For that we created a new bullet class. Now we want to add an enemy to the game, so it's logical enough that we create a new enemy class. And the reason why I'm creating an enemy class and not just doing it within our other classes is because, again, we can have many enemies that are the same type. Rather, just like bullets, we can have many bullets that are the same type. So instead of reusing that code every time, we can just create a new object of the enemy type, and we can just keep reusing that, and we will show that the enemy is actually reappearing again and again, even though we're using the same class just over and over again. So in our enemy class, we're going to go ahead and create our image for the enemy, image img, and we're going to create an int x and int y for the enemy. Just like we did for bullet, we're going to have an image for the enemy, and we're going to have the enemy's x and y coordinate. And just like we had is or visible for our bullet, we're going to have boolean is alive for our enemy, because we don't want to print or draw our enemy if he's dead, right? So actually now we're going to go and find an image of an enemy. And we see here that I found this random ghost online. We can go ahead and use that as our image, and obviously we have a constructor for our enemy class, and this has int start x, int start y, and it has a string location. Now the reason why I have this location here is because we're going to have different enemies. They may have different images, so we're going to pass in our location when we initialize the object of this class. So x is equal to start x and y is equal to start y, and we're going to go ahead and do the same thing we did in the previous class of bullet. Image icon L is equal to new image icon, and we're going to use the location here. So location is preferably going to have like c bullet.png, and we're going to go img is equal to l.get image. So we import all the stuff that is necessary for this, and so now we've initialized our enemy, and we've set his start x and his start y, and we are going to have, just like we did for bullet, we're going to have our get statements. So get x, get y, get image, whatever. Well, actually we don't need get image, but we'll do get x, get y. We'll do get alive, or we'll do is alive, and we'll return is alive. Actually we'll just do is alive, and we'll do get image and return image. So just like we did for the bullet class, we're going to have a public void move, except this time we're only going to move if the user is moving, right? Because the enemy is going to come closer. It's going to appear that he's coming closer as the user goes closer to the enemy. So we're going to get an int dx. So this is the movement of the actual user. So we're going to change x by, instead of last time, remember for the bullet we just did x plus 2. Instead of doing x plus 2 here, we're going to do x plus dx. And as a matter of fact, we're going to do x is equal to x minus dx, because we don't want the image moving right. We want the image moving from right to left, because we want the image showing up on the right of the screen. So we'll see when I run the program. And so this is x minus dx. So this is all we need for our enemy class, and now basically all we need to do it now is to print our enemy. And to print our enemy, we go to our board class, because that's where our paint is, and we initialize first of all our enemy, and we go up here, and so we create an enemy en, and let's say that, as a matter of fact, let's create two enemies. Why not? Enemy en2. So we have two enemies here. I'm just showing you that how easy it is to create two enemies of the same type just by using one class. So that's the advantage of using classes. So en is equal to new enemy, and en2 is equal to new enemy. So they're both new enemies, and they're both going to have some starting x and some starting y. So you want our starting x for this one to be p.x plus 550. So wherever our person is, 550 over from that. So that's our starting X. Our starting Y can be 200, and our location is cEnemy.png. And for this one, we can make it 700, we can make it 200, and we can make this the same thing, cEnemy.png. Okay, now we have two enemies here. As a matter of fact, we can put this as 700 as well. That doesn't matter. So for now, the two enemies are the same, and we're going to have this action performed. We have all this bullet stuff here from before, and we're going to have in here, I'm going to put in if p.x, well, actually let's paint it first. Okay, so we go over to our paint method, and we want to paint it only, remember p.x is controlling where our absolute value of our player is. So if the screen wasn't scrolling, where our player would be if he just kept going on and on and on. So now we can go ahead and print it only when we've gotten past a certain point. We don't want to print it right at the beginning of the game. We're going to print it if p.x is greater than 400. Then we want to print our enemy. But before we print our enemy, we want to check if en.getAlive is true. Then we print our enemy, because our enemy could be dead. And g2d.drawImage, and we draw our en.getImage, en.getX, en.getY. Okay, now the two different, did I not call it get alive? Alright, I called it alive. Right, sorry about that. en.alive is true, and that we print our image to the screen. Likewise, if p.x is, so our x value, we've gotten past a certain point, we've moved past, we can change this one to, instead of 400, write 500, then the same thing except with en2 now. So if en2.alive is true, then print en2.getImage, en2.getX, and en2.getY. Now we're going to have two separate images, and now we go back up here, and so what I was trying to do here earlier was if p.x is greater than 400, so this is our first enemy. If p.x is greater than 400, then we do en.move, and we throw it p.getDX. Remember, getDX returns whether we're moving or not. So this is getDX. Our DX is when we press down our forward key, then we get DX to be 1. And if en.move, and sorry, if px is greater than 400, then we want to move our enemy. As a matter of fact, we could also put in, it also has to be alive, but we don't really have to worry about alive right now because we haven't implemented collision detection, so that really doesn't matter right now. And at the end here, we put en2.move and p.getDX. So now we have this, and as a matter of fact, why don't I just quickly put in system.out.println p.x, so that you can see how our p.x is changing. So you see right now our p.x is 75, and as I move forward, our p.x is getting bigger and bigger until at this point we see our first enemy, and then at this point we see our second enemy. They are 100 pixels apart, and you can see that when I move back, they also move back, and when I move forward, they also move forward. Now, also, obviously, you need to have collision detection to detect when you hit them, and when they're off the screen, then they just go off the screen. Okay, so real quickly, we see what we did here is that we added an enemy class, which has the x and y coordinates for a basic enemy. It could have different images for the enemy. We set an x starting y and x starting x starting y and x values. Now, we added an image for it, obviously, and we made a move method which moves according to how the main character is moving. So this dx represents the dx of this dude class, which gets the dx from the key movement. Remember, so this dx moves whenever the main character moves. And I also added this condition here, and this may look confusing, but it's basically the exact same condition as we had when we were doing the move here, right? So this was x plus dx is less than or equal to 150, and so this is the exact same one. This just controls when the character is moving from the far left of the screen to the right of the screen. It controls when the background starts scrolling. So that basically just makes it look more realistic. And so we're subtracting x by dx. So dx is going to be 1 when the character is moving. It's going to be 0 when the character is not moving. And you're going to have your enemy moving from the right of the screen to the left of the screen. Okay, so we also had this, of course, this bullet class from before, and so in the paint class we basically just made a new enemy object of the enemy class, and we instantiated at 700 200. This 700x value is the value where it prints on the screen, so this 700 corresponds to the very right of the screen because this frame is 700 wide, so it's going to start printing right here, and its initial y is 200, and it has a location. And so we called this when we action performed runs when we press a button, such as the arrow or whatever, and it calls this move with get dx and the p get left, and it moves the enemy in here obviously according to what the dx is, and at the end we just print it out. We do if p.x is greater than 400. I showed you x controlled the absolute value of our character, and if it's greater than 400, meaning we've moved more than 400, then we check if it's alive, and if it is alive, then we print it at x and y. And remember, for this one we set it at 400, this one we set it at 500. So real quickly here you can check that we move our character. When we move him forward, you see as soon as it hits a certain value, enemy appears. We can fire at the enemy, of course, but 10 times. We move back, it can't move back anymore. You move forward and then it starts scrolling again, and then you can fire up to 10 times. And we don't have collision detection yet, so obviously it doesn't work yet. So, and that's it. That's our basic enemy adding. In the next video I'll be talking about collision detection, which is actually one of the more harder concepts, and collision detection occurs when one object collides with another, and we can detect when this happens and we can react accordingly.